I'm Jamie Buckland with the West Virginia FUE, West Virginia Families United for Education, talking with my friend Rachel from a Charlotte Mason Plenary. Rachel, it's so great to talk with you and to see you. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you actually founded the Charlotte Mason Plenary?
Thanks for having me on. It's so good to talk to you. We've chatted for years and never chatted in person or virtually. I've been a homeschool mom forever. My oldest is now in college and working. We've always homeschooled using the Charlotte Mason method. It just speaks to me. It speaks to so many homeschoolers because there's just something so life-giving, and it really does touch something deep inside that makes you say, yes, this is what education should be. I wanted to share my love of Charlotte Mason, but I also wanted to create resources that I wanted as a Charlotte Mason homeschooler that weren't out there. We also wanted to make sure that everyone got a seat at the table. We wanted to make sure that everyone was invited. And that's the reason I chose the name, a Charlotte Mason Plenary. Plenary actually means to unite or bring together. Our other emphasis at a Charlotte Mason Plenary is doing things your way. The Charlotte Mason method of education is really a method and a philosophy. It's not a system. So many of your viewers are leaving a system like the public school system or saying no to a system, and they may find themselves in homeschool systems, other curriculum that say you have to do it this way or you have to check these boxes. The Charlotte Mason method is not like that because it's a method. And with a system, you adapt to the system or your child adapts to the system, or they don't do well. Whereas in a method, especially the Charlotte Mason method, the method adapts to you, your family, and your child. So it's highly, highly adaptable, and it's supposed to be adapted in a lot of spaces in the CM world these days. A lot of people have turned this beautiful, wonderful method into a system, into a you must do it this way or you're not Charlotte Mason, or you have to check all these boxes or you're not doing Charlotte Mason. And that's not the message that we speak at a Charlotte Mason Plenary. From our perspective, it's very customizable and highly adapted to fit whatever your child's needs, development, your family situation. It works, and it works beautifully.
I want to tell everyone how I became familiar with your work. I started homeschooling in 2007, and that is when I was first introduced to Charlotte Mason. And I read not her volumes, but I think I read like the companion. And I very quickly thought, okay, so this is involved. I was looking for a system probably to get started. I was looking for something that I could open and go. I didn't have an education above my high school graduation, so I didn't have that type of experience. And here I was launching this homeschool with my 7-year-old or 6-year-old who's going into first grade. Those elementary years for him was very reactive. Let's try this. Well, that didn't work, and let's do this. Then I was reintroduced to Charlotte Mason in 2018 when a client of mine who is a homeschool group leader in Arkansas, Ashley, she was very persistent in challenging the idea that the neoclassical approach to education is the same thing as a Charlotte Mason approach. We joke that she stuck with it because we're both hard-headed. So she was stubborn enough to keep challenging me, and I was stubborn enough to keep challenging back. And basically, she said, you just need to read the volumes. If you read the volumes and you still say what you're saying, then I'll step back. And I thought, okay, well, let's do it. So that is how I stumbled upon your work, Rachel. This is what it started out with. I printed this out. You can see all of my Post-its.
Oh, I love all your Post-its.
Yes, this has been well loved. And I think I actually got that new printed manual that you have of volume one, and I think I have loaned that one out. This is where it started. We had a local book club, and we read through the first volume. What I will say to anyone who's possibly new to this is that it is very hard to be used to the work of Charlotte Mason and to not be impacted. So, Rachel, when you were saying that it's life-changing, which can sound a little kooky to people, I will say that it really is, because I have become a student of creation, of nature, since reading her volumes. We just weren't that way before. My younger children that are 10 and 5 are learning even how to articulate their observations and how to describe things in a way that I know we would not have done prior to or without this work. I would love it if you would just say to our viewers, if this is the first time that they're being introduced to Charlotte Mason, what are your thoughts on where they should begin?
I always tell families start with the 20 principles. I like to make things as easy as possible for families to jump in because, like you said, when you first started looking into Charlotte Mason, you had this inkling of, oh, this is going to be involved and this is going to like take a lot of time. So I like to make things that are easy and accessible and can get you started. Whether or not you read the volumes, I always say, if you can, read the volumes because it's gold. And yes, especially this book, volume 6, it will change your life. It will change the way you think about education. It will change the way you think about relationships with your children and with other adults. It will change the way you look at the world and at life. It's that impactful. Charlotte Mason had a set of 20 principles that governs her educational method. That's really where people should start, is learning those principles. The very first principle is the one that drew me into Charlotte Mason. Children are born person. And that's saying that children deserve the respect and dignity that any other person deserves. And some people may think that seems kind of obvious, but when you think about it, do we really treat children in our society today with the respect and dignity that we treat other adults with? And the answer most of the time is no. That is a very foundational shift in thinking and in interacting with our kids. That is the foundation of her 20 principles because everything builds off of that. Treating children as born persons. Over at the plenary, we have a free 20 principles study and course that you can go through, and it has a study guide. It has all of the relevant reading that I think is relevant to each one of the 20 principles. Even if you don't have volume 6, which is where most of her writings on principles are, it's all right there in that free PDF download. I also made videos of each one of the principles because sometimes we're busy. We don't have time to read. So I made YouTube videos over on our YouTube channel so that y'all can watch and really get the gist of things and start learning about those principles very easily and quickly so you can get up and running.
I love that. We transitioned our homeschool academy here in Southern West Virginia last year from more of a traditional, I wouldn't say necessarily a purely neoclassical ages and stages approach. We had over the years kind of deconstructed that a little bit. And so we were following more of a traditional classical approach to education at ACA, but we transitioned last year into a Charlotte Mason influenced approach, trying to figure out what that transition really looks like. What can we keep and what can we lay down in an attempt to look more like we're embracing these principles, to reflect more of those principles. I'm a details oriented type of person. And what I found in reading volume 6, I want to just share one thing that was a big takeaway for me. She says, so we offer prizes, exhibitions, scholarships, every incentive that can be proposed. That shift of trying to motivate children with candy or sticker systems or any type of an award system, that was a large shift. So our students were presenting written narrations in my class every week this past year at ACA. And one of the shifts that I made was, instead of saying that was fabulous or that was just so good, so well done, I was transitioning to thank you. Thank you for sharing that with us. And just that shift really is like a reorientation, if you will, on how you approach how a student is motivated to be engaged in that work. But when you're thinking of a class of 6 or 7 students, well, you can't say that was excellent to all 6 students and be authentic or genuine. When you thank them for contributing, for presenting, for being prepared, and you thank them, just that shift is kind of mind blowing in how that reorients the way that you approach assignments, even. We could go on and on about narrations in and of themselves, but I just wanted to share that was one thing that when people say, well, give me a practical way that this looks different, I think that's a very practical way that this looks different from other approaches to education.
Yes, and the view that all education is self-education, that you cannot pour into a child all that you want them to learn. They have to do it themselves and they have to take ownership of their education, and you have to step back and allow that to happen. Those are also big shifts in the way you approach education within the Charlotte
Right.
Mason philosophy.
I had a friend say, we love the unit study approach. I said, of course you do, because the unit study approach is super fun for the teacher because you get to do all of the science of relations yourself.
Yes.
We did the unit study approach when my son was going into, I believe, fourth grade. And so my Emma would have been going into first. We did a whole unit study on physics, like roller coasters. And so we went to Carowinds and we spent the day riding roller coasters and talking about physics and identifying terms. But of course that was fun because that was like a pre-constructed science of relations. Whereas in the natural reading process, reading wide and varied, then they get to have their own science of relations in identifying that, rather than us chewing that up for them and doing all that work and then delivering it to them. So that's good. That's good. So tell us a little bit more about what the products that you have that are available and the services that you offer.
You already touched a little bit on the annotated volumes. There are other reprints of Charlotte Mason's volumes, but the ones at the plenary are annotated. And that's a little bit different because when I first started reading Charlotte Mason way back when, the only thing we had available back then were the pink versions, like the old versions.
Yeah, I wonder if I can move my screen to show. I don't know which version,
I have one right here.
Yeah, they're back here. They're back here.
Even before Google was really up and running very much at all, there wasn't that much on the internet. I found myself looking up definitions, looking up, well, who is this person that she's talking about? What is this book that she's talking about? Where is this quote from? Where is this poem from? All these things that you run across in her volumes. Charlotte Mason lived more than 100 years ago in Victorian England. So her writing is Victorian English, and she assumed that people knew what she was talking about, just in the way that you and I would assume if we mentioned the Elvis movie that's out today, or the new Top Gun movie, or what have you, that people would know what we were talking about. 100+ years removed, we do not necessarily know what she's talking about. So I just made notebooks full of notes of all my annotations so that I could understand it better. When I started the plenary, I decided to republish those volumes and add all my annotations to make it easier for y'all. So for example, like here's chapter 8. In the middle here is all of Charlotte Mason's original unabridged text. And then over here you have my annotations. So it just tells you a little bit about what she's talking about, people, places, definitions, things like that.
When I first read through volume 1 with your annotated guide, I joked that it was written for my attention deficit brain, and that I have a hard time. I think my therapist would say it's because I'm both extroverted with a hint of this attention deficit disorder. But when I read, when I come across something that I don't know, I'm unable to shelf that and come back to it.
I'm the same way.
Well, good. Like mine. I like mine here. Because and then 2 hours into trying to get through just a simple passage, because that takes me on down another rabbit trail. The fact that this was in the guide and I could just make notes as I went instead of having to go and go somewhere else to find that information. I honestly think that it helped me get through the volume because when I would look at the newer translations, which I appreciate the ones that are in modern language as well. I mean, I've looked at those, but you do lose some of the
Yes.
depth and the beauty of what she's trying to say. So I love that the original text is there for us. And what volumes do you have the annotated guides for?
Charlotte Mason wrote 6 volumes on education, and I have annotated and republished volumes 1 and 6 because I think those are the most important. So, volume 1 is the kind of the how-to guide and really focuses more on children ages 9 and younger, whereas volume 6, which was the last book that she wrote just a couple of years before she passed away, is really the philosophy and everything that she had gained and all of her wisdom over the years. So that really focuses more on the philosophy and is good for all ages. I think both of those are very, very important. The other 4 volumes are in the works being annotated. So hopefully those will be
Wow,
out soon.
that's a lot of work. You
Oh, it's a
also
labor of
have
love.
a Plutarch guide.
I love Plutarch. I love Shakespeare. Plutarch is a subject that you might not find in many other curriculums, but it's very important and integral in the Charlotte Mason education. So I also created my own Plutarch guides, and those also have annotations and just makes it a little bit easier. So in the middle, again, you have Plutarch's original text, and then over here are my annotations. So it just makes things that are maybe a little bit intimidating less so and a little bit easier to get through. I have a passion for these things and I want people to love Charlotte Mason's volumes and I want them to love Plutarch and things like that. So
It's a great introduction into these works that could be overwhelming and easily go over our heads, but you help to make it approachable. Then just this last year, you've started offering services above your consultations, but now you kind of gone into the co-op range of
yeah,
things.
we do offer consultations, including special needs consultations. So, anybody, if you have learning differences or disabilities, or even just different challenges like chronic health issues or illness, all these things make us have different needs, say, than the normal
Mhm.
family. We do have Amy Bodkin over at Charlotte Mason Plenary. She's our special needs consultant. She used to be a school psychologist. She's autistic herself. She's fabulous, and people just rave about her and her consultations. So we have started the Charlotte Mason Co-op, and it's an online community, and it has a couple of different facets, if you will. First of all, we just have a community of moms where we get together almost every week via Zoom live, and we chat about different educational stuff. Right now, for example, we're doing a live study of Charlotte Mason's 20 principles. We get together once every other week and discuss the 20 principles. We're also doing a book club, Amber O'Neill Johnston's new book, A Place to Belong. Love her and
Mhm.
her work. We're going to be doing a discussion of volume 1 coming up in the fall. We have special guest speakers. I did a whole session on homeschool planning. All of those kinds of things are wrapped up into the Charlotte Mason Co-op membership. Then we also have classes, both for moms and kids. We have classes that we offer that you can take a la carte. It's not like a co-op where you go all day and you take all the classes. You pick and choose what fits your schedule and what fits your budget. Last year, we had more than 30 different classes offered, all the way from high school science, high school biology, nature study. I taught a Plutarch class. I'm teaching a Shakespeare class this fall, handicrafts, leatherworking, woodworking. We had yoga classes, Spanish classes, folk songs, picture study,
Wow.
composer study, so much. I know I'm forgetting something, but we have those classes available as well. It's great fun. It's been really a labor of love. So this will be our second year going into the co-op.
Another great point, something that our family has embraced and loves about the Charlotte Mason method. For my compartmentalizing brain, I like categories. So I think it was in volume 3, the manifesto, where I read the books, 2 different categories. My Ashley, who I call my Charlotte Mason personal guru, she once said that it's books and things. There are like 2 approaches to how we learn, or 2 ways that we learn. learn. But the books and the things we use to model our program at our academy this past year, in the morning we had books, narrations from our readings, geography, history, and then in the afternoon we had folk dancing, picture study, and nature study. That was just, it was a beautiful way for the mind to be engaged and then to rest. I tell people, you're reading through volume 1 and she's going to tell you when to eat and when to go out of doors. So I love that you continually remind us that it is meant to be adaptable and in a way that our families really can work with it and not against it, with the approach and with the principles.
We have the form guides as well. The form guides, if you're not familiar with Charlotte Mason, forms are an easy to comparison to grade levels here in the United States, but forms are what they used in England. So for example, form 1 would be grades 1 through 3. Form 2 would be grades 4 through 6. But more than that, forms are developmental levels. As a child develops on that developmental ladder, you'll see big changes every time a new form comes. As they progress and develop, then they're moving up into different kinds of work and more difficult work. To make it easy just to get started, jump in, you can create a whole Charlotte Mason curriculum yourself. Even if you don't know much about Charlotte Mason, that's the beauty. The form guides really walk you through every single thing. They have a section that walks you through every single subject within the form, tells you how to teach that subject, what books Charlotte used, what books we recommend that are modern and imprint and not outdated. And then I walk you through how to create a schedule, and it has all the information from Charlotte Mason's timetables about how long each lesson should be, how many times per week. Is it in the morning? Is it in the afternoon? It makes it super simple to create your own. A lot of people don't realize how simple that can be, to create your own and customize it to your child and your family. It really isn't that hard. If you are already using a curriculum that you like, you can also use the form guides to tweak it and make it fit your family a little bit better.
That was another thing. I'll toss out this nugget and then we'll get ready to wrap it up. I noticed that was different from how I had approached homeschooling my children pre-Charlotte Mason, was that the space that I gave my children, or even the space that I gave myself, to digest that information. So you think interacting with an idea and being introduced to a concept or being introduced to a story, a narrative, fictional or not, being introduced to that as a society learned to cram all of that information in. How many novels did you get through this year? You know, the book club, like how many stickers, how many books have you read? What I've loved about this approach is that it intentionally slows us down. This past year, we only did 2 narratives for geography. We did the seabird and the paddle to the sea. It was a different approach for me and for Elsie, who's 10. When you look at, we were just reading one piece of that story, just 1-page text on Tuesday, maybe a 1-page text on Thursday, maybe a 3-minute video. When we did Paddle to the Sea, we were watching videos on logging or the wildlife that was there in that geographical location, rather than it be, where are the Great Lakes? Can we identify Niagara Falls? Can we identify these pinpointed marks? It was read this little bit of text, think about this little canoe making its journey through the wildlife that it's encountering, the weather that it is enduring. With Elsie and with me, is that it gave us this space to ponder on that, to think about that, and again, to identify our own science of relations in talking about the wildlife and sketching that out. It just gave us time and space, versus that's a book that you could easily read in one setting or in 2 days. But when you draw that out and you vary the subjects, then all of a sudden you're engaging the brain in a completely different way and building the capacity for understanding and for comprehension in a way that just is so different than cramming it in and getting it through. I love that you have these guides that help us look at all of those different subjects. I think that's something that needs that help. You need that assistance when you look at all of the subjects that Charlotte Mason covers. Those guides would help the parent to figure out, okay, when are we going to do this and how do we schedule it all?
Yes. You know, what you talk about, the slow reading, is that taking one book and scheduling it over many, many weeks or months, children and ourselves, we need time to sit down and assimilate the things that we take in. We need time to ruminate, think about, process, and really internalize. That's built into the Charlotte Mason method. It is just so beautiful. I guess, are we wrapping up? Because I have a quote I wanted to
No,
share.
go ahead. I want it. I want the quote.
My very favorite Charlotte Mason quote of all time, and it may be your favorite too. The question is not how much does a child know when he has finished his education, but rather how much does he care? And about how many orders of things does he care? In fact, how large is the room in which he finds his feet set, and therefore how full is the life he has before him.
Just yesterday, since taking on this work in the fall, I have given up a large portion of actually homeschooling my children. And so I have a hired nanny who's fantastic. She's been a childhood friend of my older daughter. We've known their family in school. She stepped in to help manage the things because I realized I could not work over 40 hours a week and give them all of the attention and care that they needed. Just yesterday, we were working in the flower beds together. They were helping me pull weeds. And I thought the beautiful thing about this approach is that we do not have to slot it into little boxes, into little hours. And it really does become a lifestyle. And that time together, instilling in them, fostering their curiosity, fostering their confidence, just in a way I respect their little questions, giving them time and space to ask those questions for them to verbally process, be able to narrate back and use their describing words. It really is, it's life-changing. So I know that sounds so hooky to those of you who are not used to this, but I'm telling you, it really is that wonderful. So Rachel, thank you so much for sharing with us today. Of course, those of us in West Virginia are looking to launch the Hope Scholarship. For many of you who are watching this and you're in West Virginia and you've chosen the Hope Scholarship to use the homeschool option, the educate at home option, you would be able to use these products, use these services, and be able to afford those through the Hope Scholarship program. Exciting for Arizona, they just passed an expansive school choice ESA in Arizona over these last few days, which will allow their families to do the same thing. It used to be just needs-based, I believe. Now it is opened up to all. So it's exciting to be a part of this movement, the school choice movement here in the United States, to help families afford this option in a way that maybe they couldn't before. So Rachel, I'm excited to direct traffic your way. Thank you so much for talking with us today. I know that we will be in touch because now I'm thinking I need to place an order and sign Elsie up for some things as well. So that's the problem in doing this. Every time I interview someone, I'm like, oh, something's sparkling. So thank you so much. Where can we go to learn more? What is the website?
Oh, website is cmplenary.com. We have a Facebook group too. So yeah, if y'all could join us.
Thank you so much. It's been great.